harmed by Western nations. And so from one step to another, finally I'm here. I've been described as an activist for the first time. That's true. Mainly my career is engineer working in plastic industry, metallurgy, and armament. I became an activist, in fact, with Euromaidan first, and then with the operation No Mistrals for Putin, that was launched by Bernard Gruat, a French from Western France, Brittany, who found abnormal that these warships would be supplied to Putin at the moment he was a threat for Western Europe and the rest of the world. Maybe you want some interruption for the translation? It's okay, no. So I decided last year to join the fight here. I'd been an international observer at the moment of the election, and in fact I discovered Russia and Ukraine this recent years, the past 4 years, and I chose my side, I must say. And when Euromaidan started, I was quite interested to know what was going on. I joined some activists, bringing them my expertise on armament, helping them to identify ammunitions and weapons used by the Berkut, especially when Yanukovych administration said that they didn't use any hunting guns against the Maidaners. In fact, they used the palm gun, riot gun. It means the 12-gauge caliber, same caliber than the hunting guns. And they used some ammunitions that were purposely made for the Ministry of Internal Affairs by a small company in Kiev. So it was a straight lie, and I brought the evidences to the people of Euromaidan, and so that's the way I got involved in Euromaidan. I volunteered to be an international observer for the election, was here, found out that it was not necessary to have a second round for the election, good thing for a country that is at war, and as I say, probably the best choice you can have for the country right now. Because from a military point of view, what President Poroshenko has done, it was the thing to do. The country was not able to fight at the moment Crimea was invaded. Many people complain and call the Marines in Crimea cowards, traitors. I must say that it's more difficult to not fight and to not open fire when you're a soldier than to open fire. They have done the right thing. They make Putin's plan fail because Putin expected some fight, and he wanted to justify it that way, justify the invasion of Crimea by a casus belli that he never got, and that he still didn't get, despite using proxies like he did in eastern Ukraine. So until now, I'm saying my hat is off to Ukraine and to the fighters, to the, all these volunteers, to the diaspora that help the country to fight, help the country to rebuild its military capacity, because at the moment of the invasion of Crimea, there were less than 6,000 people able to fight in the Ukrainian armed forces, and that is plain crazy, because when I was a French soldier with the French forces in Germany, at that moment Ukraine was a powerful military machine. We were facing a Soviet group of armies, and among them there was an Ukrainian army, and we knew exactly what they had in manpower, in equipment. The T-64, we knew everything about what they had, like they knew about us, of course, and we knew we would have a hard moment containing them as per the plan that was at that moment to slow down the Soviet forces in case the attack would be started, and to give 3 days for the French forces to prepare nuclear tactical strike and strategic strike in case there was a track or a will on the French territory. That was the sanctuary policy of General de Gaulle, and we knew it would be, the plan would be implemented like it was planned. So it's plain crazy to discover, like I did, that this country that was so powerful military, that even at the moment of the independence had 1 million people under uniform, under arms, able to fight, with all the equipment and could mobilize 4 more million people with the reserves, the internal forces, all those people who had been trained at the Komsomolsk, the people who had been trained to bear arms and use arms. So it's plain crazy to discover that right now the situation of the country was at this point that people were obliged to shell out money out of their pocket to help rebuild the military capacity and to find out something that were even worse. For example, that the country may even lack of ammunition. That's a big problem. We know now, all this information can be found open sources, what is called OSINT, open sources intelligence. It's very easy because the Russian people are so proud of themselves that they brag about themselves in Ukraine, that they introduce themselves with their units. They take photo, and we even have the geolocalization. So when some people are bragging, sharing Ukrainian forces with Grad rockets the whole night long, and you even have the pictures and the geolocalization. So what is crazy is that right now we know that 700 main battle tanks are already in Donbass and 1,100 infantry fighting vehicles. All these, of course, have been found on side workshops and probably final sales in supermarkets or markets, like Putin pretended in his famous speech. And so this is a huge threat, because if you want to take in comparison 700 MBT in Donetsk, in southeastern Ukraine, is more than the combined armor of France, Italy, Belgium, Germany. That's a huge threat. And you have 1,100 infantry fighting vehicle able to fight day and night with night vision systems, with thermal sights. And so when people pretend that Russia's army is today very weak and small compared to what was Soviet Union, they just forget one thing. Russian Federation armed forces are not Soviet forces. Right now they have professional people. They have people with modern communication system. They have modern equipments. They have firepower, and their action is demultiplicated by the equipment and the training they got. When you have a simple platoon leader, you have seen all these little green men in Crimea, with all this communication equipment they had on them, with the microphone they had near the throat or near the mouth. It means every platoon leader knows exactly the position of every of his men. He can react immediately. It means deploy more men on a counterattack, on an Ukrainian defense. It means even a small group of soldiers that is trained with this method can demultiplicate his action and be much more powerful than the opponent or the defender. That's one thing. The second thing is they fight day and night because there are vehicles equipped for that. Right now, we see that Ukrainian forces are using even GSM, cell phones. The law has just been taken to prohibit them, to use them, because it's very easy to decrypt communication and to locate people using them, to locate the Ukrainian units. That's one point. Another point is to face such a threat in terms of mobility and with armored forces, it needs anti-tank weapons. And what we can see is we don't see much anti-tank guided weapons in the hands of ATO forces or volunteers. But we have seen a lot. At the beginning of the action last summer, we have seen a lot near roadblocks that were manned by so-called separatists. One must know that most of the equipment in Ukraine was stored in the eastern provinces. We had seen many pictures of trucks carrying away anti-tank guided weapons or man-pads, mobile, portable, air defense systems, full trucks that were taken out. One of the units was mainly located in Luhansk. Luhansk was a huge depot for both ammunitions for rockets, for anti-tank weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, and there was a factory called the Luhansk ammunition plant. That was a plant that was devoted only to export purpose. They exported mainly to the US market, that is a huge market for buying ammunitions, and Russia was not able to supply the American market at that moment because Russia's capacity was fully used to stock for war. So they bought ammunition for civilian purpose that they resold to US because their own capacity was fully engaged. There was a moment 2 years ago that people were limited in US to 1 box of ammunition for the Russian ammunitions, and that was not normal because the capacity is huge. The problem is there is no production of ammunition in Ukraine. There was only Luhansk ammunition plant for the exports, and even worse, Luhansk was equipped with high precision CNC machinery to be able to produce the production line able to assemble ammunitions. All that has been stolen and taken to Russia with the first humanitarian convoy. The same convoy they used to take helicopters, engines from the Zich Motor Company, and much more. It means today we do not know exactly what is in storage because that's even worse. For more than 20 years, there has been robberies in the depots. Discussing with people, I found out that some depots have exploded, a lot of them during the years, because ammunition was stolen from this depot to use the scrap metal to resell it, use the powder as a fertilizer. It's an organic compound, it's very good as a fertilizer. And so, in fact, these depots were then, when there was a control or an inventory, were burned. You don't know whether 1 million ammunition cartridges or 5 million were in it. So right now, if an all-out assault starts with Russia, I'm afraid that there won't be enough even capacity for rifle ammunitions. It seems some volunteers units, they even dealt some alcohol, cigarettes, foods, and all that with regular units to get ammunition, because ammunition was severely controlled for the distribution on the front line. That indicates that there is really a problem. Then we had another problem. Not only the Budapest Memorandum, but the action of some senators, US senators, that wanted to disarm, because everyone knows that arms are the problem, not the people using them, that wanted to disarm Ukraine after the independence, not only from its nuclear weapons, but thousands of tons and millions of rounds have been destroyed, paid by US, paid by Europe, and paid by NATO. It was organized by Senator Lugar and a young senator called Obama, who was at that moment one of those who visited Ukraine and could tour the facilities where all this was disassembled and destroyed. All this will be cruelly missed right now because there is no illusion to have. Let's be realistic. The Third World War started at the moment the first Russian armored vehicle rolled into Crimea, and it will not stop Putin. Right now, they are ready for more than 3 weeks for an all-out assault. The number of vehicles that have been displaced to Eastern Ukraine. The volunteers used some drones to fly over the Russian border and inside Russian territory, showing miles of field depots, ammunition field depots, miles of them, especially with these long crates that contain each 2 Grad rockets. The Russians themselves have shown on social networks like VKontakte, they were loading trucks with these rockets. They removed them from the crates that contain 2 each because they are too cumbersome and space consuming. And they loaded them, dozens of them, in trucks. That's why these trucks then, it is known that around 100 trucks every night cross the border with Ukraine to resupply the so-called separatists. It is known that the assault on the Balsave and some other place was to seize the railroad crossroad, the railroad system, to be able to bring as much ammunition as they could using trains. They have done it. You don't pre-position thousands of tons of ammunition like that just to impress someone. You do it when you're going to use it. You do it when you're going to use the typical Soviet way to crush everything under a huge firepower, like they have always done, like they have done during the Second World War, like they have done in Chechnya, and like they have done, in fact, everywhere. That is their policy, and they always do that. So all this material, all these equipments have been pre-positioned to be used. That's clear. So I would like to end with something. I see a lot of, sorry, I will have some hard words, apparatchik of the European Union coming to Kiev, enjoying the good life of expats in Kiev, being well paid, to explain to the Ukrainians that they are right to be willing to join the European Union. I find that this money should be better used to speak to the people in Western Europe. I'm a French. Flying east to west, I'm crossing not only a few time zones, I'm crossing a few parallel universes. From Russia, where you have the Russian reality with the propaganda machine, to Ukraine, where you have another reality, Western Europe, and then USA, North America. In my own family, in my own environment, people have no idea of what is happening here. Absolutely no idea. I find the most important is not to preach to the core like it's done right now, but to explain to the people in Western Europe, in Western nations, what's happening. To counterbalance the propaganda machine with facts, with truth, never falling in the propaganda ourselves, but demolishing all the propaganda with facts. That's what I'm doing on a few sites, on American sites, and especially for more than 1 year and a half, since Euromaidan started. But in fact, I hear about some money being budgeted to do that. I find that now it's more important to have a very strong signal to Putin's Russia, delivering weapons. As I said, but I'm a dreamer, if 1 or 2 airborne divisions had been put on combat-ready alert at the moment Crimea was invaded, probably the invasion of Eastern Europe would not have happened. Because Russian, I wanted to call them Soviets, they still follow exactly Lenin's sayings. He said, let's not forget, he wanted to seize the whole world, and that Europe was saved by Poland in the year 2021, when they stopped the Red Army. And what he said is, use your bayonet to test the enemy. If it does not resist, move forward. If it resists, move 1 step backward and try another place. Nothing has changed. Putin does not respect anything else than brute force. To all this, I will call that jokes that are being played in front of the international community with John Kerry moving to Russia to meet his counterpart, to meet Putin, to meet Lavrov. Sorry, another lapsus, Lavrov. We know that they have not respect one engagement, one word they have taken, starting with Budapest Memorandum, and now Minsk I and Minsk II. This is a huge hypocrisy. I understand better now how World War II could happen, the race to the war, the race to a world conflict. It is exactly happening now for the same reason. Cowardice, hypocrisy, greed. And most of the people do not want to see what's going on. So that is one message I try, as just a single human, to pass. I use my expertise, my knowledge of some fields I have to back this message. But it is very important that everyone at this level passes the message, lobbies his government to take notice of what is going on. And I say when people ask me why I'm here, I have no Ukrainians, except some jokes sometimes. I'm not of Ukrainian descent. As I say, the only link I have with Ukraine is my maternal great-grandfather fought in Sebastopol, and my father fought in Kursk and Cherkasy, because he was German. I'm totally a European, half French, half German, and 100% European. And here is Europe. Here I feel like in Europe. When I was in Russia, the country was beautiful, but I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel at ease. Here I do. That's why I choose to move here, because I'm much more credible in the help, the assistance I can bring, than staying behind a keyboard in France, quietly. But anyway, if we don't do anything, Russian tanks will arrive in France too in a few years. Nobody can know. Nobody can predict how a war will unravel. The only thing we know is Putin has lost. That's clear. And the Russian Federation is dead. But the only question is, the only two questions are when and how many millions dead. So that's why I'm here, because it's Europe. And it seems I'm not alone. A lot of other people I know, foreigners, are here. They bring their expertise, they bring their will to fight. At the moment, I will have some hard words again. Some Ukrainians are trying the best way to flee out of the country. Be them rich, it's quite easy, or not rich, trying to be students or things like that. That's why sometimes I have some hard words when some Ukrainians complain about what the West is doing for them. Help yourself first, and then the world will help you. What I know is my hat is off to those fighting, to those who contain the invaders, to the point that some officers, general officers in the Russian Federation General Staff say they underestimated the capacity of resistance to Ukraine. I just remember that having studied military history of Europe, the fight had been very hard in Ukraine for 4 years, when the partisans here took care of both the Germans and the Russians, the Soviets. I just know that in the West, they could cross to go back to Germany only when they abandoned their weaponry. Most of the time it was discussed by the priests who told the German units, okay, you can cross the Carpathia, but you just let your armament here. And another thing is that the resistance against the Soviets, you know it better than me, had lasted for a few years after the Second World War. So when everything started, I say that compared to Afghanistan, here would be a picnic. Afghanistan would be a picnic compared to here. Because, in fact, unofficial body count shows that more Russians have died in 1 year since they openly and covertly moved into Ukraine last summer to save their buddies' butt that were losing in front of the ATO. More people have been killed than in Afghanistan. And I think every meter, every square meter, Russians will try to save here will cost them dearly. But Putin does not mind anyway. And
Mr. Huet, I'm sorry, but I need to cut you here because we're waiting for Colonel already. But we have time for one question. If there are any questions or clarifications from journalists. If no, thank you very much for coming and delivering your message. It is indeed very nice and very supportive of you to deliver that speech. And now we're moving on to the next press briefing. Thank you once again. If once you're in Ukraine and you have a statement, feel free to come back to Ukraine.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you. Тож дякую, колеги. На цьому будемо завершувати наш наступний.
Thank you very much. And our next briefing will be in several seconds.